What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we have another Diablo 4 video here going over a lot of the announcements and quality of life changes they had during the live stream campfire chat yesterday. And if you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend that you go and watch it, at least small parts of it, or find a nice breakdown of that video, because there was a ton of really great information. And this video is really going to be going over the recap here on the Blizzard website under the Diablo 4 news section. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. And this is the Descend into the Diablo 4 Developer Update live stream recap here. So this first paragraph is really just going over that, the Season 2 will be launching on October 17th, as well as patch 1.2, and that they're going to have another campfire chat on October 10th, and that's going to be going over class balance, new unique items, sweeping changes to resistances, and quality of life and bug fixes. So do stay tuned for that, because that's going to be a very important developer conversation. But going down to the very first section here, the 5 new in-game bosses. Now, we knew we were going to get 5 new in-game bosses from a previous article. However, we did not know exactly how those bosses would be implemented into the game. So this little part here shines some light on that. It lets us know that we're going to be getting these bosses in world tiers 3 and 4. And we're basically going to do random events like world bosses or certain nightmare tier dungeons or Tree of Whispers. And by doing those events, we're going to get specific crafting materials. And once we have enough of those specific crafting materials, we're going to be able to craft a specific item that will allow us to summon one of the 5 in-game bosses to fight. And that will allow us to basically target farm uniques that we might be missing for our builds. So that's a really cool system, I think, that they've implemented into the game, so that way we can play all of the different aspects of Diablo 4 and have an incentive to actually play them. On top of that, target farming uniques is something everyone has been asking for, especially those Diablo 2 guys who are really in love with that target farming aspect of those games. Now, Duriel is going to be the level 100 boss. So like Uber Lilith, Duriel is going to be the in-game boss. And Duriel is going to be really special because you have to fight some of the other in-game bosses, and I believe it's Varshan and Galvanic Saint that you have to kill in order to get the materials required to summon up Duriel. And then once you can summon up Duriel and kill him, you have a much higher chance to get the Uber uniques that literally nobody has right now. So that's going to give you the incentive to fight Duriel. And I really hope they spend a lot of time, really developing that boss fight, because I know a lot of people were rather unhappy with some of the mechanics of the Uber Lilith fight. And I think that if they could implement this boss in a really good way, it'd really do a lot for the game going forward, especially for future bosses that they may put at the end of the game as well. And then in-game activities. Now, I'm really happy with this overall change to some of these in-game activities, because a lot of this is just time reduction. So the time between Legion events has been reduced from 30 to 25 minutes. 5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but man, I'm just happy they reduced it to some degree. I think it should probably be closer to 20 minutes. And then Legion event warning timers increased from 5 to 10 minutes, so you'll know when those Legion events are going to be spawning sooner. And then the world boss fight is available more frequently to players to all world tiers, as the spawn timers have been reduced from 6 hours, a whopping 6 hours, to 3 hours and 30 minutes. I don't know why 30 minutes, but they just had to keep it on there. I don't know why. And I, again, think you could probably reduce this down to probably every 2 hours. They've also increased the warning timers for that. So we're getting a longer period of time we know that Legion events are going to be popping, and a longer period of time that we know world boss events are going to be popping. Something else they've done is increase gold and experience rewards for Hell Tides, cashing in Grim Favors, and completing individual whispers. So that's really good. We definitely needed more incentive to do those activities. And then here they basically just made it where the nightmare sigils you get from Tree of Whispers are actually in line with your current level of nightmare dungeon that you've actually completed. So that's really useful for making these Tree of Whispers that much better, because now that you're going to actually have to engage with them in order to get specific crafting materials for in-game bosses, they're going to make the rewards that much better. So we don't feel like we're taking that much of a back step away from Nightmare Dungeons when we actually go and entertain these different events. So I think that's a really good thing. And then another big one, experience and monster leveling. Now, I come from the boat that I don't believe reaching level 100 should be a difficult process. I don't think it's really an achievement. I know that in Diablo 2, that was ladders, that was getting to level 100 was really big, but I think now that action RPGs are in a different place, we should be focusing more on, you know, PvE and in-game bosses in dungeons. We should be focusing on PvP, and then we should maybe even be focusing on some time trials because those are quite fun as well. But we really shouldn't consider, in my opinion, like level 1 to 100 to be a massive achievement. In my opinion, it should be a nice, steady progression into level 100 where you don't really feel capped off at any specific level and it just becomes this intense grind to reach level 100. And the way they're going to be doing that is by making it 40% faster. So if you haven't been keeping up with season 1, they've released several updates that have kind of rolled back a lot of the experience nerfs they made and even made experience a little bit better. So if you felt like they were fast now, they're going to be incredibly fast after this update. And then, just some world tier changes in terms of monster leveling, so we get a much smoother leveling experience throughout our entire leveling process. Then Incense will now keep our bonus experience that they grant. And then this is another big improvement. So increase the potency of experience bonuses from Elixir and Season Blessings by making them multiplicative with the world tier bonuses. So before it was just additive. You basically get 5% added on to your already your pre-existing experience bonus from the different world tiers, and then your season blessings was just additive as well. Now they're actually going to be substantially better by making them multiplicative, meaning that we're going to get a massive experience bonus just from using the elixir and just from seasons of blessings. So that's a really nice change. And then Nightmare Dungeons. A lot of quality of life improvements throughout this entire section here. So we're just going to talk about it a little bit. So the first thing is expedite the demon slaying process as Nightmare Sigils now teleports you directly into the Nightmare Dungeon. Now, previously it would teleport you outside of the dungeon, so we're basically just scratching off an entire load screen there and getting right into the action. Everybody can appreciate that. And then avoided some players not getting Nightmare Sigils from dungeons. That's not something I really deal with because I play solo, but this will be a really nice change for those players who really enjoy teaming up and tackling stuff together. And then objectives have been removed from some dungeons, only defeating the boss is needed to defeat the Nightmare Dungeon. Now, we don't know what those some dungeons are, but this already sounds really good in terms of, playability with the different dungeons, because I know myself, I outright will avoid certain dungeons, especially if they require a ton of backtracking. And then some of the changes to the afflictions, you guys can go over that here on this article, but the one I really wanted to point out is Lightning Storm. I absolutely hate Lightning Storm. I avoid that thing at all costs, but now I might actually play it because it says they only starts the Lightning Storm when you are in combat, instead of like every 2 seconds slowing you down to a crawl completing your dungeon. And then it will start the protection dome in a direct path to its targeted player. And again, another great change there, because honestly those things could spawn anywhere and you would be scrambling to try to get into the dome in order to not get that massive damage from the lightning strike and probably die because you have monsters attacking you at the same time. And then something else they did here, after the shock happens, you then get a 35% bonus movement speed for 5 seconds. So basically negating that time you spent standing still inside of the dome. Now, I personally would have preferred them just to remove it entirely or change it to where you would never have to stand still inside of a dome. But this seems like a pretty decent middle ground, and I'm happy to see this change. So I'll definitely try this out when Season 2 drops. And then again, another change, massively reduced backtracking by placing all dungeon objectives on the critical path of a dungeon, making them much harder to miss by taking a wrong turn. And I know we've all had this experience, especially with any of the ones where you had to place multiple objects on multiple pedestals, or you had to kill the elite mob to get the little essence to put in the bowl thing to open up your pathway. You're always having to run back, run to this corner, run to that corner. Now they're just going to be in a nice, consistent flow throughout your dungeon, so you will have a much better dungeon experience. I think that's great. And then many dungeon layouts have been redesigned, obviously, to coincide with this, reducing the backtracking as well as allowing us to go straight to the boss on some of these dungeons. And then another one I like to touch base on here, Paragon Glyph experience or glyph experience has been increased. Now, to me, I didn't think that was a big deal, but it's a nice change for players. I personally would have rather them just give me all my Paragon glyphs from, level 50 instead of making them random drops, because I like to get a hold of those ones that I actually need for my build instead of having to get them, randomly from a drop. But overall, a decent change here. Then some events here made dungeon events more worthwhile. Definitely a much needed change. Hopefully they're like open world events, so that way the rewards are really nice. And I think with all the experience changes, it's going to be worth doing these events in general, just because we're going to be getting so much experience from killing monsters already. This is a big one. So one of the biggest issues people are having is itemization in Diablo 4. A lot of what I read on Reddit, a lot of what I see online is complaints about the itemization. Now, I don't think this specifically will fix it entirely, but man, is this a big jump in the right direction. And so we're going to talk about it pretty extensively here. So significantly free up inventory space by making gems a crafting material. Gem materials can now be taken to a jeweler for crafting. Obviously, this is a great change. Now we have more space for our items in our inventory. Something they already announced they were going to do. I like to see it here in the notes. Prevented players from losing their progress on a hardcore character from connectivity issues. Scrolls of escape are now consumed if a hardcore player disconnects while in combat, teleporting them to a safe location. Huge, guys. So I'm a hardcore player. I love playing hardcore mode, and this is a big, big, big change for me. It gives me, and it obviously makes a reason to keep all your scrolls of escape. I myself have died several times to different connectivity issues, so this is a much needed change, and I'm glad to see it in Season 2, because I believe initially they were going to be a little further out with this. So Season 2 already here, I'm pretty happy with that. And then reduce the chance of being locked into certain stats on a legendary item by reducing their overall enchanting cost. Again, another much needed change. Enchanting costs were out of control, like millions and millions and millions of gold. It was ridiculous. So I'm happy they changed that, especially since they changed the way some of the affixes roll on your gear in Season 1. And then this is the massive one. This is a massive one here. So reduce overburdening inventories and causing unnecessary trips into town. And World Tier 3, normal magic and non-sacred rare items will drop as crafting resources. In World Tier 4, normal magic and non-ancestral rare items will drop as crafting resources. Gold drop rates in World Tiers 3 and 4 have been increased to compensate for this. Now that is massive. So no longer are we going to be getting normal items in World Tier 3. They're just going to drop as crafting resources. And no longer are we going to be getting sacred items in World Tier 4. Again, they're just going to be dropping as crafting resources. This is going to free up a ton of our inventory space and not penalize us by not allowing us to get those crafting materials we need for some of the gear in-game activities, such as rolling different affixes on our gear, or socketing different gear pieces, things like that, or upgrading different gear pieces. So this is a great, great change to the overall itemization in the game. And then here we see some buffs to World Tiers 3 and 4. Higher level monsters in World Tiers 3 and 4 drop sacred ancestral items of greater item power potential. Then we also have normal Whisper Cache rewards now provide plus 10 item power, and upgraded caches now provide plus 20 item power. And that, again, is another great change because we're going to have to do Tree of Whispers so much more now. And then Hell-Tide cache rewards now provide rewards of plus 20 item power value. So again, another incentive to go into Hell-Tide. We're going to be getting those higher level item power rewards from those chests. phenomenal improvements to the game. I think this will be one of the best aspects of season 2, this change here. You won't even notice it because you'll be playing the game and enjoying it so much. But let me tell you something. For all those new players that are going to be joining in on season 2 and even returning players, you're probably going to love this system without even knowing how much you love it. And then some general improvements here to Renown. I'm not really going to touch base on this first part too much. We already know that they're basically letting us keep all of our Renown rewards, so no more Renown grinding. And what I hope is that into the future, that they actually use the Renown system to kind of scale up our heroes in a meaningful way. So maybe instead of, now that we don't have to actually re-earn all of our Renown, maybe add some new caps to it and some new things to engage with to give us some new rewards, like maybe extra skill points or more Paragon board points. I think that would be a pretty cool way to keep Renown relevant into the seasons to come. And then a big one, applying all of this to hardcore characters, because I know myself, I had died in the early phases of Diablo 4. I died a couple times early on with my hardcore character, and you basically lose all of your progress. You have to start all over again. So we're not going to have to do that with hardcore characters. And then, they did say they're adding 2 additional character slots here. I don't think that's too important because you have a shared inventory between all your different characters, but I'm sure some people will like that. And then the big one here, coveted items can now be marked as favorite and cannot be sold or salvaged. So basically locking gear pieces that you want to keep. That's really good. Then going down further, we have mounts. Now this is my kind of soapbox here. I always feel like they should just remove all the cooldowns off of the mounts. However, they didn't do that. They did, however, give us some nice changes. So let's go over some of these. So improve the horse riding experience by improving the overall responsiveness of your mount. So now we're actually going to be able to move around better instead of getting stuck on every single twig, every single pebble. We're actually going to be able to move apparently better overall with our horse, which is the purpose. Kind of the horse felt terrible, really bad. And then reduce the time it takes to travel across Sanctuary by increasing the spur duration, which now breaks barricades. So I thought it would be better to implement a jump button that you could spam to jump over barricades, because the spur duration was so short that you would run out of sprints before you would even, reach a barricade. However, I hope when they say increasing spur duration, they mean a substantial increase, because that stuff runs out so fast. It almost feels like you don't even have it at times. And then base speed increased by 15%, and this obviously doesn't mean the top end speed, so just your overall move around speed, which is pretty nice. 15% is pretty good. And then obviously remove this silly thing, the cursor having to be at the edge of the window to reach max speed. That's really good. Improve combat and mount versatility. Not too much to write home about there. I never really engaged with the dismount anyway. Some cooldowns on the manual dismount and forced dismount. That's always welcome. And then the delay between combat skill becoming available after mounting. Honestly, in my opinion, they should just remove the cooldown entirely from a manual dismount, and they should remove the cooldown entirely from getting up on your horse to use a combat skill, because I don't really see why there's a cooldown. They're not really that substantial. The combat skill off your mount isn't really that big of a deal currently, so I don't really see why there would need to be this arbitrary cooldown in place. And then just some smaller things here, town adjustments. Now, again, another one of these I think people are going to love without realizing they love it. Having everything in a closer, condensed area to get a whole, go to your different vendors is going to be a really welcome change. There are a lot of towns that are really cool, but you have one vendor at the top of the map, one vendor at the bottom of the map, the blacksmith over here, the obel person over, the purveyor of curiosities over in the corner, another corner, and you're just spending like 5 to 10 minutes walking to each destination before you actually get back out into the action. So it's actually, I'm probably exaggerating that 5 to 10 minutes, but it feels like 5 to 10 minutes. So this is actually going to help us get back out into those fights a lot faster. So this is a really welcome change. I'm happy that they actually addressed the overall map layout in towns and kind of condensed it down a little bit. And this is another big one right here. Again, improved navigation through Sanctuary following character creation by adding 10 waypoints to the list of automatically unlocked waypoints for those that skip the campaign. Man, 10 more waypoints is always welcome. I know there were several places on the map that didn't really have a waypoint in a convenient location, and you would still have to run super far just to get to where you're going. So 10 more waypoints sounds great. And then several UI fixes here, or UI changes for the overall quality, including the big one, improved item sorting, and overall organization by adding stash search and stash filter functionality. So another big one people were asking for that they're saying is going to be in patch 1.2 at launch. So I expect these patch notes to be massive when they finally release the official patch notes. I don't even know how many pages it's going to be, but it's going to be pretty substantial. So that's really it for the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this little brief breakdown. I hope you guys are excited for Season 2 as much as I am, and I look forward to playing with you guys out there and tackling some of these world bosses and engaging in some of these different activities and really kind of figuring out this new system, the vampiric power system they have planned for us. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. What are your opinions? What are some of the changes you're most excited about? What are some of the changes that you really hope they announce on the second campfire chat on October 10th? But other than that, that's all for the video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, depending on wherever you're from, and peace out. See you in the next one, guys.